Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Message Talk Show with your host, Alex Gordon. Today is an awesome day, and I'm hoping that you have done exactly what I keep asking you to do. Phone a friend, call your worst enemy, get a cup of coffee, get a cup of tea, turn off all those other distractions this morning, because today we have an awesome lineup today, an awesome lineup for you. And I'm hoping that you're going to give us your undivided attention today. All right, guys, give me your undivided attention today, because you know what? We've got a gentleman in the house here man, this guy calls himself a rebel. He is the rebel entrepreneur. Do you know what a rebel is? Do you know what a rebel is, guys? Do you know what a rebel is? Do you know what a rebel is? So I'm just going to ask the rebel this morning, Joel Blake OBE. Just say good morning, Joel.
Hey, good morning, Alex. How you doing, sir? You well?
I'm keeping fine this morning. I'm keeping
Fantastic.
fine.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Thank you for inviting me on such a great opportunity just to speak with you today and just to share. I really appreciate it. I'm humble. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I woke up this morning, and for the minute I woke up, I looked outside and said, yes, I pinched myself, and yes, I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm alive.
So there's a blessing right now in these times, right?
Man, I'm alive, man. Before you used to take things for granted, you roll out of bed and you just do what you got to do. No, man, you have got to, when you wake up, give thanks. Right, I'm here. I'm ready. I'm ready. What have I got to tackle today? What have I got to tackle today? But hey, before we run away with Joel this morning, I just want to say to you this morning, guys, good morning to you all, wherever you're calling, wherever you're listening from. You may be listening from the USA, you may be listening from the Caribbean, you may be listening from Asia, from Australia. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're calling from. This is the Message Talk Show, and we broadcast 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning, and we just talk to inspired, mission-centered individuals. We talk to people who are out there changing and impacting the world, because we believe the world is going to be changed by mission-centered individuals. Governments don't change the world. Governments maintain something of order, but they don't change what's happening in our world. It's people like you and me, ordinary people, who bring change. And that's what we're doing. We're finding up those people from the grassroots and say, right, guys, how are we changing the world today? What's going to happen in the next 10 years? Where are we going? And that's what we have this morning with Joel Blake OBE talking to us this morning. But before we do that, let me just play you one of my pieces. I tend to do that because it wakes people up. It wakes people up. The sound just wakes people up. It makes them realize that, yes, okay, I'm awake. I've heard the sound. I'm awake. Let me give this some attention. So, hey. So this morning we have Joel Blake in the house. And, the first time I had a conversation with you, and you used the term rebel, man, that just sinked into my spirit, man. Whoa. This gentleman sees himself as a rebel entrepreneur. That means the status quo, or the way things are done, is not something that you're going to follow in your business. How did that come about, Joel?
Well, for me, Alex, it started from where many of us come from, is just our own experiences and normal working class background, but with a sense of ambition that you couldn't hold, and I certainly couldn't hold in. Rebel for me means about seeing what's normal and purposely trying to disrupt it, because the change that will come from that, the learning that will come from that, will inspire the next wave of greatness, of potential, of opportunity, of equality. And for me, in growing up where I did in Birmingham, we lived in 4 of the 10 most deprived wards of the city during my kind of young toddlers, teenage years. And, when everyone's in the same environment, where your community all feel the same way, where there are challenges, low employment, crime, Yet within the community, there's a sense of community. You realize that there's a level of ambition that we all have, but many of us won't be able to realize. And at a young age, in my teenage years, I'm talking like 12, 13, I wanted more. I wanted more than what society was deeming I should have because of the color of my skin, because of my accent. Um, I wanted just to be more and do more, but do it in a way that adds value back to my community. And I made a bit of a commitment, I guess, at the age of 16, that no matter where I go in life, I will never forget my roots and never forget where I'm coming from. And so that rebelness came from a sense of drive and a sense of wanting to be better, but without forgetting what started me off in the first place. And I've just kept that kind of mentality right through my career to date.
How comes at 16 you can be driven by wanting more? How comes at such a young age, 16 years of age, most kids aren't thinking about what they want more. They're thinking about playing games. They're thinking about just chilling. How comes at 16 you're thinking about wanting more for your life and for your community?
I mean, look, the reality is, and it depends how deep you want to get, but the reality was that between the ages of 11 to about 16, I went through many, many different phases of who I was and trying to identify who I was. As a young black man exposed to so much things so early in terms of the crime I was seeing, in terms of the challenges I was seeing in terms of building relationships, even within my own members of my own family, etc. I realized that if I want to be better, I have to come out of my own comfort zone. And I didn't understand what coming out of my own comfort zone meant, but I knew it couldn't be staying where I was, even at that young age, because I knew that the emotional intelligence I had at that age about myself was such that it was making me feel as if, do I even fit inside my own community? And from a sense of, and I mean that from a sense of, as a black man, having a level of ambition outside of the black community and the norms of the black community was making me feel ostracized within my own community.
Wow.
And so it was almost like, you can't have dreams. You're not one of us if you got dreams. It was that type of approach. But I knew there was a bigger world outside of the ends.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so for me, it was kind of like, okay, if I'm facing challenge within my own community, bearing in mind at that time, my father used to run a nightclub that was at the time Europe's largest black-owned nightclub. And so, Mary J. Blige and Nirvana and the Ramones and House Martins and Public Enemy. And when they all came to the UK, my dad's club was the kind of breakout club into the UK in the 80s and early 90s. So there was a perception that I was going to be okay anyway, because I was one of the kind of the Blake family, if you like. But the reality was that it was my mum bringing me up by herself from bed-sits to council flats and doing the best that she could, working 3.5 jobs. So there's the perception within the community that I'm okay, and then there's the reality, and then there's a lack of acceptance because everyone felt, well, you're going to be okay anyway, so what are you bringing these dreams in for when we're not going to achieve them? But then the reality was that I was probably worse off than half of them, because I wasn't involved in crime. I wasn't on the road shutting per se, but I was on the edge of it. I could see what was happening, but I wasn't part of it. So I wasn't accepted by what people would deem as normal just to survive in that environment at the time. And so there was dealing with all that identity and community challenge, but then there was also the fact that, attempted suicide at the age of 13 and didn't do it right. So I went into depression for 1.5 years, and then started to kind of come out of that a little bit more and realized that I was worth a lot more than how I was seeing myself. And so as you get into like college era and you start to think about different careers and you get exposed to different people because you're in a college environment, at the age of 16, I realized that I've just got to go, not leave my community behind, but I've got to go. And so that 16-year-old Joel was driven as hell. And bearing in mind, that was the kind of era of, hip hop and I had Tupac in my head all the day, and do you know what I mean? So it was kind of like, yeah, I'm about this. The garage kicked in, so I'm going clubbing, and you know what I mean. And so you get exposed anyway from all shapes and sizes.
That sounds like a lot was going on at that time, man, because you know
Yeah.
there's so much going in your head, and at the same time of so much happening, you're almost wanting to exit. You know, you said about getting to that point of thinking of suicide.
Well, I'm happy to talk about it, but I guess for me it was a moment because my mum was working. I think it was her third job of the day. It was a typical kind of winter's evening, doing what she's doing to try and bring money in. And I used to be babysit by a lady who lived upstairs in the flat. It was an old Scottish lady. Um, and as a white woman, Scottish woman, color was not an issue. You know, she treated me like I was her own son. You know what I mean? And the level of respect that she had. And but on this particular evening, she wasn't well. So my mum did a typical Caribbean thing, lock the door, and if I not tree time is me. If nobody no locks, so nobody will open the door. And so it just happened to be one of these nights where, and it was only 2.5 hours she was going to be out of the home. But in that 2.5 hours, it was probably the most challenged time I felt as an individual. And so I'd hide it from mum because obviously you don't want mum to be upset and all of that stuff. But basically, I walked out on the balcony and jumped on the balcony and sat there for about 45 minutes contemplating pushing myself off. And I was about to, and this is, I wouldn't say I'm really religious as such, but I know there's power out there because while I was there, if you imagine, I'm probably about 3 floors up, which doesn't sound high, but the way the flats were situated, it's like a double flat per floor, so it was higher than you'd think, but it was completely dark. So if you looked up, you couldn't see, but looking down, you could see everything. And there was an actual what do you call it, a lamppost on the path underneath the flat. So you could see when you can't see when someone's walking down the path, but when they come under the light of the lamppost, you'll be able to see, and then they'd walk through and carry on. So I remember I was sitting on the ledge of the balcony and just in that space, and I heard some singing, but I couldn't see who was singing, but I could tell by where this noise was coming from that it's someone who's coming down the path. So as they're coming down the path, I'm thinking, who's this singing? Because the singing was like heavenly. And I
Wow.
say heavenly, I'm like, who's that?
Wow.
When the person came under the light, what I didn't realize that who was singing was the area prostitute that everyone knew. And she was carrying shopping bags from a well-known store that I won't mention, but at the time was not regarded as a place you want to shop. But she was singing at the top of her voice, heavenly. And I was just transfixed and mesmerized. And as she passed under the light, I saw who she was, and she came out the light, and I just sat there until I couldn't hear it no more. She carried on along the path and went about her way. And at that moment, I jumped off, but I jumped off back into the house
Wow.
because I realized even at that age that if someone who, and I admit I judged her for what she was doing to survive in the area, but if someone who I'm judging at that moment, which I hate myself for, but if someone who I'm judging at that moment can be happy and singing and just
Wow.
doing what she's doing,
Wow.
who am I to pity myself when I've got my mother going to work for the third time for the day, just doing what she can to give the best opportunity for me? And I'm sitting here on this balcony pitying myself. Who am I? How arrogant of me to feel that I've got the right to do that. And so from 13 to about 16, that's when the positivity began to creep back in
Wow.
terms of my own kind of change of who I am. And that rubberness really kicked in. So that was a life-changing moment. I never saw that woman again. She never knew I was on that balcony. I never shouted out to her. She changed my life. I would never, ever know that.
That is amazing.
And
That, that,
so that was the moment for me.
that's amazing. That is amazing. That's amazing. You know, when we sometimes we focus on ourselves and we don't realize we don't see what else is happening in the world. And you said your mum's going through 3 jobs just to make sure you have a better life. And you can't at that time see her, but you see yourself. Guys, I don't know where you're joining from this morning. This is the Message Talk Show host, Alex Gordon. We're talking to Joel Blake this morning, OBE, and we're talking about how to scale your business. This is the rebel entrepreneur, man, and he has a deep past. He has a deep past. But what he's telling us, regardless of where you are, you have dreams. You have dreams. And sometimes your community don't get behind you with your dreams, but that ain't gonna stop you. You've got dreams, and those dreams are allocated to you, and you've got to make them happen. Am I right, Joel? You got dreams.
100%, because as much as I look back at that moment in my life then, I look at it as a positive, because if I didn't go through that situation, I know many of your listeners have gone through their own situations, but you have to see a negativity as a learning lesson.
Wow.
And so for me, as far as I'm concerned, I've never failed in my life.
Wow.
Not from a place of arrogance, but because if I haven't been able to achieve something, I've learned how not to do something, and that's a lesson worth learning. And
pause it, man. Pause there. Say that again. I have what? Say that again, man.
So I've never failed in my life, because whenever something hasn't gone the way I've planned, I've learned a lesson.
Wow.
And so every time I've learned something, it's propelled me to not make the same mistake twice. So therefore, I've never failed. And that mentality has allowed me to really just drive through all those years. So as I got into entrepreneurship, I started my first business when I was 20, and everything just kind of just scaled. I scaled myself first.
Wow.
And that's the important thing.
Stop there, Joel. I'm going to quote you in some of these quotes. The first 3 times I quote, I'm going to quote you. I'm going to quote your name, right? I have never failed. I have never failed in my life. All I had was lessons that I've learned. Can you imagine when if you are training another generation of entrepreneurs and young people, and you're getting that into their head that they can't fail. They can't fail.
Because society, especially because, sorry to cut you, but I think when we come from where we're coming from, a young person may feel that they're failing because they're not being accepted by society, or they're not achieving what they believe they should achieve, or they're not getting the equal opportunities that they deserve. But what we often forget, especially from our community, but I think all communities generally, is that the resilience that you create within yourself, the survival instincts that you generate through that experience, are life skills. They're not skills in the ends, they're not skills in the community, they're life skills. Because when you get into entrepreneurship, that resilience, that sense of survival, that sense of purpose, that's what gets you through the darker days.
Wow.
And so our success as entrepreneurs is grounded in our experience, but often we separate the two. We have to, we jump into this dragon's den idea of being an entrepreneur. Forget that.
Wow.
Your innate survival as an individual human being is entrepreneurship. The question is, do you recognize in that way, and do you use those skills in that way? And that's what I always hope to.
So some of the young people that we're castigating across the country right now as criminals and labeling them as criminals, and we are writing them off. We're writing them off right now because of the situation they find themselves in, and because of what they're doing right now. Those young people can become entrepreneurs.
Well, let's be real about it, right? I'm not condoning crime, and I'm not condoning bad activity. I'm not condoning negative activity that hurts people. But if you look at the actual way in which many young people engage with criminality, it's entrepreneurial in its sense. It's just being used in a negative way. So, as I say, I do not condone any crime, but I understand the way in which crime is being delivered in some circumstances as entrepreneurial skill. Take, for example, if you've got a young person who's unfortunately on the street and he's selling drugs for whatever reason, he's still got a product, he's still using marketing skills, he's still using sales skills, he's still attracting a customer market, he's still got his costs, but he's just using it in that negative context. Yeah. So what happens if you help that young person to look at those skills and reimagine those skills in a positive sense? Imagine what businesses they could create. Imagine the contribution, the positive contribution that they could make to their community, to society, to the world, if they're just kind of harnessed and given the opportunity to see that in themselves, if they're given the opportunity to maximize their potential. But often, unfortunately, many of our young people use those skills to survive in the communities that we're from. And that's across all communities.
Yeah. Yeah,
So it's the
well,
challenge with that.
if we can just bring a level of education to show and help some of our young people come back from that path,
Yeah.
show them the worth in themselves, the,
Mm.
the dreams that they have, and because they're still working to dreams themselves, they're hustling and they're committed wrong, but it's still a dream that's driving. At the end of it, they've got something that they want to achieve, although in a
Mm.
negative way, although in the way that we don't condone in our society. But we've got to bring some people back. We have got to drag them back from where they are, because sometimes situations are forcing people to act, and they're in a momentum's created in the wrong direction, and
That's right.
something needs to break that fall and pull them back. Man, you just got me going this morning, Joel. Man, you got me going. But Joel, what then started your entrepreneurial journey? What jumped you in your entrepreneurial journey to
Yeah.
scale? To scale, because you said you scaled yourself. You scaled
Yeah.
yourself first before anything else happened.
So, Sage 16, when I started college, I also started working in a factory. So I was peeling stickers of hangers for £2.40 an hour, I think it was at the time. Um, and again, it was a very humbling experience, but I was generating my own money, and that then gave me the impetus to kind of look at, well, what else could I do, type of thing. Um, and then at the age of 18, I literally walked into a recruitment agency and I said, look, I've got these GCSEs, I've got little college education, I've got this little bit of work experience. What have you got? When I pitched myself, I realized that if I don't go in that recruitment agency and pitch myself correctly, this is not knowing what pitching is, but just going in and just saying, look, I know I'm worth more. This is all that I've got. What have you got? I walked out of that recruitment agency with a job within a FTSE 500 company as a marketing assistant. Um, and I took that job on, did that for a year and a half. And then I went back into my community as an employment mentor. So I got the corporate experience within that year and a half, and I went
My,
back straight back into the community. As I used to work for Connections. I don't know if many of your listeners will know Connections, but it was like part of the youth service, so it worked alongside the youth service, providing employability skills. So I'd had a little bit of work experience. So I went back into my community, helping our youth how to do CVs, interview skills, presentation skills. I did that for about 3.5 years and became the lead mentor trainer for the Midlands. So I would go into corporate environments and then train their staff on how to engage with young people from our community.
but
Um,
you didn't have an MBA. You didn't have an MBA nor a
no,
degree in what you were doing. You just walked into an agency and pitched yourself.
yeah, because I thought, well, look, what I've got to lose. The worst case scenario is I go back to my evening shift in the factory. So what have I got to lose?
Wow.
And so in doing that, and then becoming that in that role with supporting the corporates, I was able then to help them to develop new CSR strategies and activities that were long term and much more sustainable than just giving a little £1,000 to a project and saying hold that. I was like, well, no, what are you going to be doing for this project for the next 12 months, 3 years, and starting to develop talent pipelines. And then I realized I could do what I was doing for Connections for myself. So that's when I left altogether and started my first business. So I had to. So the scale up of myself first was the mentality. It was okay. What does it was the clarifying of the vision first, because for me, there's no point saying you want to achieve that. And what does that mean? Like I want to be a doctor, and what type of doctor? So
Hey,
I want to be a heart surgeon that specializes in young people in third world countries. That's a vision. Do you get the difference?
specificity. Yeah.
It's the specificity of it. Because the deeper you get into the detail, is the more emotionally connected you become to the vision.
The deeper you get into the detail, is the more emotional you get connected to the division.
Yeah, the more emotionally connected you get to the vision. So you have to clarify your vision first,
Wow.
because then when challenges come, that clarity that you've had in the first place reacts with you emotionally, and
It's
then it gets you
rooted.
back on track.
It's
It's
rooted.
rooted in that sense. So that was the first scaling up of self. It's clarifying that vision, and then I had to really separate my what versus my why. So the why for me was I want to help other people like me be able to maximize their potential regardless of any difference that they have.
Wow.
That's my why. Always has been, always will be. The what is how am I going to make that happen? So at the time, it was designing these programs as a young 18, 19-year-old going into these corporate spaces, going in there with my Nike tracksuit and my Nike Air Maxes and saying, hey, this is what it's like for these young people. And then over
Man,
time, you start throwing on a one shirt, you put on your one tie, you start putting on a suit because you're adapting and evolving
man,
yourself.
hey, you must have been nervous, man. Don't tell me you weren't nervous. You were wetting yourself going in them places.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie to you. Of course I'm nervous, man. I'm going into these glass buildings. I'm going into these glass buildings with people who've never spent a day in the life of our communities. Because at that point, it wasn't just black community; it was right across the community. Um, but what I knew is that I had something that they wanted. Because this is where communities, where we're coming from, teach you a lot about life. I
Mm,
knew that regardless of how they see me or how I see them, I have to know what they're looking for.
yeah.
I knew what they're looking for is new talent. What they're looking for is the ability to evidence how they're supporting diverse communities across the board, race, age, gender, disability, the whole gambit. I know that. So therefore, all I had to do was position the value that I'm bringing in that language for them to understand how it adds value to them. So whilst I'm going in there in a tracksuit and trainers, I'm articulating the value in the way that they
Yeah,
understand.
I understand it.
Not come and help me because I'm from the community and
Uh,
I've never been a begging bowl type of person. So
begging.
I ain't going in there like, please, sir, can I have some more? I'm not interested. I'm not really that guy. I'm
Hey,
going in saying, look, I know what you're about and I know what you want to do. Let me help you to understand how to do that better.
so you
And
understood the value proposition.
100%. So I've clarified the vision. I've separated my what versus my why. So therefore, I then now have to position it in the right way. And that's what I did. And then, as soon as possible, I started getting my sharp shirts and look at one shoulders with the one crease and cuff and
What were the responses like? Did you get any negative response? Did you get
yeah,
people
yeah,
questioning you? You have to think, who do you think you are? Or, you haven't come out,
absolutely,
give us an idea what happened.
absolutely. I mean, from being patronized, in terms of, yeah, there, you do some great stuff for the community, Joel. We'll be in touch, and you never hear from them again.
Wow.
Um, through to, yeah, okay, we can give you we'll send a couple of our staff on your program, and give them an invoice, and you're charging yourself far too less, but they're not telling you that. And then they
Wow.
leverage that program and they replicate it, and it becomes their program. Been there, done that. You
Stop
know,
there. They leverage your program.
yeah, of course.
They
Yeah.
take your program, leverage it, and push it out there.
This is why it's so important to understand what value you have,
Wow.
because I would look at literally. I remember. Obviously, I won't mention it. I remember going into one particular organization. They asked me. They gave me a brief. I designed a program. I went in, pitched the program. They loved it. Gave them a price. They loved it. Contract signed. Delivered the program. Fantastic. Money in the bank. Thank you very much. Less than 3 months later, I'm seeing that program rebranded a little bit. Excuse me, a little bit of a tweaks, but the core is my program, delivering it back to the community and
Wow.
other communities,
Wow.
and having raised funding on the back of it, so it didn't cost them a penny.
My God.
But they'd use the corporate knowledge at that side. I didn't really understand 100% then.
Wow.
So they would leverage my product, draw down revenue funding from elsewhere, so they covered their cost, deliver the program, and get the benefit of all the value of adding value to the community.
Yeah. The kudos. Wow.
And I think they draw down about 8 times more than I was charging them at the time in funding. So their cost was already covered, plus they made a profit on the funding.
Wow.
So been there, done that. You learn scars that you wear with pride, lessons that you learned, you move on. It's never happened again.
That didn't stop you. That didn't stop you. That didn't stop you.
Oh no,
You
no, no. Because it's a lesson learned. Yeah, it's a lesson learned. But it's never happened again.
you were mad though. You were fuming, weren't you? You were saying,
Oh,
"My, you were you were some choice
let,
words
let,
are going through your
let,
head."
let me drink my tea, Yama.
But isn't that amazing though? Isn't that
Yeah.
amazing that
But these are
people
the lessons that you learn. This is, scaling is not about, a kind of a real jump up. Scaling's
Yeah.
about just and eventually you get yourself through.
Yeah.
And those lessons that you learn along the way is because you're always putting yourself into new environments,
Right.
into new spaces. And so there's also new things that you need to learn. The secret is how quickly can you learn these things and implement the learning.
Yeah. So you're
You
stretching
know,
yourself all the time. You're pushing
yeah.
yourself out. You're constantly going outside the comfort zone you've just created.
And learning to be comfortable with uncomfortability.
Wow.
And that's the rebelness within me. Like, I like feeling uncomfortable because it means two things. I got something to do, or there's something I haven't done. Does that make
Learning.
sense?
Hey, let me quote that one again, man. Learning to feel uncomfortable because I've got something to do,
Yeah. Or there's something
what?
I haven't done.
Or something I haven't done. Wow.
And it might be, and it might be a paradoxical thing I'm saying, but you think about it logically.
Yeah.
If there's something to do, it means, is there something I need to build upon? Is there something I
Yeah.
need to tweak? Something I need to refine? Or if it's something that I need to kind of just, haven't done, then there's an opportunity to go and create something brand new, something that's not been done before. But I've got to just make sure that the outcome of that still hits the purpose.
That's a
And as long as
scaling.
there's alignment with that, yeah,
That's a scaling philosophy, man. That's a scaling philosophy. That's a scaling
100%.
philosophy, man. Just looking at what you haven't done and learning to feel uncomfortable. So you don't reject the feeling of being uncomfortable. You strive to be uncomfortable all the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because when it's all said and done, right, it might sound flippant, but business will never be as serious as real life.
Business will never be as serious as real life.
So I'm comfortable with the uncomfortability of the business world because what really centers me and my values and what really drives me are nothing to do with business. Because here's the play. For me, entrepreneurship has always been about personal transformation and change. It's not because I'm in business. I don't
Yeah.
need to be in business to be an entrepreneur. So for me, business is just the vehicle that allows me to transfer value from an idea to a solution that serves a need. So when I'm thinking about uncomfortability, it's just the uncomfortability is, well, how am I moving this vehicle from here to there? Okay,
Wow.
well, once I've worked that out, I've got nothing to feel uncomfortable about. But people get so wrapped up in that journey that they
Yeah.
forget about who they are as a person. They forget about the fact that vehicle can't move unless they are right in themselves. So
Yes.
scale yourself first, then you can create any vehicle you want.
Wow. Have you-
And
have you-
so
have you-
entrepreneurship is about personal change. It's not about having a business, although business is a massive part of that,
just
but
a
it's
vehicle.
not the reason. It's the vehicle of transferring that value from your idea to a need that you're solving, and more importantly, a validated need. Not a need that your ego is telling you is a need, but what your potential customers have identified as something that they want and would be willing to pay for. Big difference between the two.
Wow. You read a book.
No?
Man, you just need to keep talking, right? And send the video to somebody and let them transcribe it, and you've got your book. That's all you need to do, Joe, man. You need to get some of your stuff transcribed, man, into books, man, because this is
Appreciate that.
these are the thoughts that we're missing on where people are pursuing business as if it's everything. As you said, it's the personal transformation in your life. That's it. Business is just a tool that you use.
Because, it might sound again flippant, but if for whatever reason your business can't continue today, you can start a new one tomorrow.
Yeah.
By the end of this event today, we could set up a company and be trading, or at least start marketing through social media for free. But you can start a business and get going. We can go online and get a logo created in under 10 minutes. You can crack on. It's not difficult to start a business. The difficulty comes in sustaining that business for the long term. And that's where the uncomfortability comes in, because the idea is one thing. It's how do you take it forward to achieving that outcome that you want for that business. That's the difficulty, and I completely understand that. And I've been there. I've lost businesses. I've nearly lost everything that I held dear to me because of business. I've been there. But the reality is that the lessons I've learned from all those experiences have made me a better entrepreneur. And there's still a long way for me to go. You know, the moment I put a cap on it, it don't make sense to me. Um, but what I've learned so far over the last 15 years as an entrepreneur, and the things that I've done and the things that I've feel blessed to be able to have achieved, um, it just makes me feel even more confident about the future. Um, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take learning. It's going to take even more humility to make that work, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm uncomfortably comfortable.
You love that term, really. I'm comfortably comfortable. That's amazing. That's amazing. You know, the past 9 months, people have been going through hell. We're in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Things haven't been how we wanted them to be.
Mhm.
But in the midst of it, we have got to be able to see ourselves working towards our own personal transformation. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. You see, you know, COVID has taught me a lot of things personally as an entrepreneur. Um, it's reinforced the importance of agility. Um, it's reinforced the importance of flexibility. Um, but more importantly, it's also reinforced the importance of value, and understanding that what I might think is valuable to somebody else may not be what's valuable to them, given where they are in their lives, their business, in their environment, their circumstance. And so the agility and flexibility must enable me to make sure that that value itself is being positioned in a way that still meets them wherever they are at. Because it's never about what I think I want to achieve. It should always be about what I want my customers to achieve.
Yeah.
And so the last 9 months have really helped me just to reroute myself in that principle. And it meant pivoting my whole business in May, June this year, which then opened up more opportunity. I managed to get more investment. I raised more money for my business during COVID than I ever have outside of COVID, um, because it's the ability to be able to just make sure that the value proposition is right in the times that we're in. Um, it's helped me to open up even more opportunities for other people, because I've been able to really understand what value I want to provide to whom and when and how. Um, and so these 9 months have been a challenging time. It's not been great every single month, but it's been challenging enough for me to know what I'm about, what I want my businesses to be about, and more importantly, what I want my future to be in whatever new world gets created. Um, and I'm comfortable with that, but at the
Wow.
same time, I'm also appreciative that I'm still here to be able to even think and have
Yes.
those opportunities ahead, because many haven't.
Yes.
Um, and so I'm humbled and I'm blessed and I'm thankful for that opportunity to still be able to become whatever it is I want to become, and the businesses and the communities that I'm here to serve to become. It would just take time to get there, but I'm comfortable that we can do that.
Wow. Wow. I got a question coming in here saying, what do you want to see happen for Black businesses in the next 10 years who are trying to, they're trying to anchor themselves in the society now?
Yeah.
The Black businesses are still very young. They're still very young when it comes to the corporate life in this
Yeah.
country.
I think what I want to see happen for Black business over the next 10 years is our businesses building the capacity to scale and have scaled and created more unity through that scale. So what I mean by that is, if you go back to the early 1900s, 1910, 1920s, and Tulsa and Black Wall Street, we already proved that we can create an economy for ourselves as Black businesses and as Black people from the Black community. Um, and yes, all the challenges with that and what happened to our communities then is a negative thing that
Mm.
happened to us. But if you just look at what we achieved in that time, that sense of economic structure, that sense of sustainability, that sense of investing back in our own, that's almost been beaten out of us as time has gone on. We've lost that ability to unify at a structural economic level. it sounds horrible, but in the community, we can create community businesses and we can help each other, and that's wonderful. We all support each other. But as we try to grow our businesses, we start to have a lesser level of connection and community in terms of our economic power. So I'd want to see us as Black businesses becoming a much more connected economically and structurally, so that we've got that sustainability for our communities for the next 10 years. You know, that's what I'd really love to see happen.
Wow. So what you just said there then is that for some that who've been successful in their businesses, and as they grow and the businesses start to take on a more national and global front to their business, they then lose roots with where they're coming from.
I've seen that happen many a time. I mean, if you look at the US, though, there's a slight difference to that. In the US, there are economic structures that are built by Black people, for Black people, for Black communities, for Black society, and has been entrenched in that. And then, sorry, that's been entrenched in the US. In the UK, it's slightly more difficult, and I think it's just the culture of the UK is a lot more difficult. It makes it harder for us to do that. So, you know, the vision for that next 10 years is not an easy one. Because I think just our cultural makeup, you know, there's a lack of Black leadership in the key decision-making areas of our political system, of our financial systems, of our business support systems. The higher up you go up the chain is the less dark it becomes, so to speak, the less female it becomes, the less disability, the more older. So change is going to come over time, and I'm absolutely passionate about that. But it takes a level of responsibility also to break through these doors, just to kind of let people know what it can be like, and to give that blueprint backwards to the next generation coming through. But if we unify more as a business community, we can not just try kicking a door, we can use a big old cement ball on a big sledgehammer, and you know, we can smash down these doors and walls and buildings and
Tear
create
down
our
those
own.
doors.
And I'm not trying to sound like an activist or a police at my door, but for me, that's how passionate I am about the fact that we have to create our own if we're not given the opportunity to be equal. And I don't mean that in a detriment and in a disrespectful way of any other community, but all we ask for is a fair and equitable opportunity to be the best that we can be. And why can't we?
Wow. All we ask for is the opportunity, but it's creating the opportunity, isn't it? It's building almost like a parallel system to cross over, to create a bridge between the two systems. Because as you said, the higher you go, the doors are closing. It's older. They don't want you. They don't want you. So, okay, let's build a system over here, and it gets to a certain level, and we can negotiate terms for how we get access.
Well, let's be also real. There's also some in-house healing that we need to do as a community. Wow. If you look at it from that perspective as well, you know, we've been battered, bruised, dragged through. You know, look what's happened to us as our culture. And I'm not just talking since slavery, because there was a whole Black history before slavery. Our history didn't start at slavery. And I'm fed up with people using slavery as the marker of Black communities. You know, let's go back to the ancient kingdoms of Kush and African empires, and really start thinking about our history and take pride in our royalty as Black people. You know, get off my high horse with that, but we're coming from a place of power. But just through time and circumstance, that's been beaten out of us. And sometimes we get into a state of victimhood because of that. Sometimes we get into a space of anger because of that. Sometimes we can damage ourselves because we're not taking the right approach around how we move forward. And so we fragment ourselves. Everybody else sees that, and then it just picks us off, and cultural appropriation, and we start to see what's natural to us being used in other ways and then sold back to us. And I'm like, can't we just do it our own way, in a way that we always used to? and it might be too idealistic. I don't know, but
Ah, man,
we all have,
it's
we all have spheres of influence, so we can do something.
yeah, it's like what you're saying. You said come from this position of power, find
Yeah.
the power and work from there. Work from the power, build that
Mhm.
strength. You know, and wow, man, it's crazy to think that in 2020, as a community, we're still in that in that healing process.
But
It's
let's be
crazy.
real.
We
It is
need
crazy, Alex. It is. It is. It is. But let's be also realistic. That's about our community and what we need to do. The
yeah,
reality is that we all operate in an inclusive world. Whether we feel included or not, we're in an inclusive world. Because when we're out there doing business, we're not just doing business with ourselves, we're doing business with everyone else as well.
yeah,
And so we also need to understand how to position ourselves and articulate ourselves in the wider ecosystem. And therefore, it's important that we bring a much more um, a much more education focused mentality also, so that
mm,
we can also teach other people, regardless of their difference, how to interact with us, but also how we can add value to them, so that
yeah,
it never becomes a race thing. It becomes a value thing.
yeah.
Because I don't want someone to give me business because I'm black. I
No,
want someone to give me business because they appreciate the value that I'm giving them.
that's what I bring to the table. Yeah,
Like, I'm not interested in getting handouts because I'm black, because then I just become, another
To-
kind of
that's
token.
tokenism. Man. That's
I'm not
tokenism.
interested. I'd rather you don't give me the check.
Yeah,
I'd rather you say to me, you know what? Because you're black, or because you have this experience, or because you're coming from a different perspective, how could we use that in what we're doing to better ourselves?
yeah,
Now we can talk, because then you're respecting me for what I'm bringing, and I'm respecting you for what you already have.
yeah.
When
Let's
we bring those two things together, magic will happen.
find the bridge. Yeah, find the
And in
bridge.
that way, we can educate others on how to work with people based on value. Because to
Yes.
me, giving it just because I'm black is just, again, you're just reinforcing the sense of victimhood.
Yeah, that money's
And
dead.
where I need that as a kickstart for something, fine, as long as we're agreed that it's part of a longer journey and there's a path and there's a strategy and it's a long-term thing. It's not a tokenism thing, because then I'm just ticking your box and I'm not really getting no benefit. I might get short-term value, but I ain't getting no long-term benefit. I want long-term benefit.
Yes, long term. Wow,
Yeah,
guys, I don't know where you're joining us from this morning. We've been chatting about how to scale your business. But what Joel has been saying is that to scale your business, you've got to scale you first. The personal transformation and scaling your own mindset is the beginning of the scaling process. Because when you get used to becoming uncomfortable, moving away from being comfortable, but uncomfortable, being uncomfortable in uncomfortable situations, you'll always push yourself more than what you're doing right now. That's
mm.
amazing, man. That is amazing, Joel. This has been an amazing. The time has just disappeared from us, Joel, man. And
That's
we could
crazy.
talk all day here. We could talk all day. But like what you were saying here, don't give me the money because of my color of my skin. Don't give me the money for color of my skin. Give me, let's find out what value we bring to the table and how my value can add value to you, and how we can work together to build that value so we can do something.
Absolutely. And I think once you get to that conversational point, and don't get me wrong, people will often come to you when there's a need around diversity inclusion as a black person in business, and that's happening now. We've seen that because of Black
Yeah,
Lives Matter. We've seen
yeah,
that throughout this year. So I'm not discounting opportunities that come to you because of your race. What I'm saying is, don't go out there expecting opportunities because of your race.
yes,
It's about going to get those opportunities because you're bringing value despite your race. But I think once you get to that position, there are kind of 5 key drivers that I think are important to then scale your business. So once you've gone through that journey and you're ready to move it forward, um, and whether you can go for that journey or not, if you want to scale, here are 5 principles. Number one, it's about having access to the right leadership and management capability. So what I mean by that is, you might have been the best person to start the business, but are you the best person to scale it? Are you getting in your own way of the potential for your business to scale? You might be the passion, the ideas person, but you may not be the operations, the technical person. So who could you work with? Who could you bring in to help you to scale that business in a technical way once you realize you're at that position to do so? So that's the first thing, the leadership and management capability. And then in addition to that, how do you create the culture that attracts the right people into your organization who want to help you to scale your business? So what is it that your brand is saying? What is it that your narratives are saying? What's the language that you're using? How are you marketing yourself? Are you talking the language of the people that you want to bring into your organization? So leadership and management capability is really, really important. The second thing is then it's about access to talent. So once you know what talent you want and why, bringing that talent in, but then making sure that talent stays. So how do you retain that talent once you have it in? So what's the, again, the culture, but what's the incentives? What's the level of accountability? Can you help your staff to now think more entrepreneurially and give them more leeway to bring more ideas into the business? How are you showing them that their businesses, their ideas are having an impact within the business? So access to talent is really, really important. And the reason why that's important, because it kicks into number 3, which is access to innovation. If people feel connected to your business and connected to the outcome and connected to the vision for the business and feel they've got a strong part to play, that's when they will bring all the ideas and that new thinking. That's when they will bring the organization out of its level of comfortability to become more comfortable in those new areas because they're doing it from an innovative point of view. So can you create safe spaces in the organization where people can feel they can share their ideas? Are you helping, do you have suggestion boxes where people can give you their ideas? How are you helping innovation to come into the organization? Because once you've got that, then you start really motoring on into access to markets. Because once you're more innovative about what you're doing, you can start thinking about how you can attract more customers, how you could use that innovation to widen your opportunity. So what new ideas can you bring to your existing market that encourage more people to spend more money with you? Or how can you create new ideas that attract new customer markets to your business? So you're scaling through that customer proposition and customer value that you're providing. And then finally, number 5 is access to markets. Access to finance, sorry. So once you've got access to markets, access to finance could mean generating more revenue, or it could mean having to raise more money because you're creating more opportunity that can make more money over time. But until you've gone through the process of understanding what it looks like at the top, bringing in the right people who bring the right ideas to attract more customers, to make you more money, you will never scale your business. And it starts with you, and I would say those 5 drivers for success.
Wow. Wow. I was going to ask you to summarize this morning, man, but you just done it. This is almost the path to raising finance and venture capital funding in your business, because what you've done is capacity build every area of what your business, to put the structure in place to get the finance to fund the idea.
Because absolutely any finance provider wants to know the story of your business. They want to know, they want to read, when they interact with your business, they want to be able to read your business like it's a story. They want to know the beginning. They want to know what you've done. They want to know how you're moving forward. They want to know where you're going. They want to know how you're going to get there. So it's important to structure your business in a way that tells a very clear story and make sure your numbers reflect that story too. When I talk to other entrepreneurs and mentoring and when I'm doing talks, etc., I just say, give me your cash flow forecast as an example. I will tell you about your own business just by the numbers of your cash flow forecast, because your numbers tell me the story of the journey of your business. So then I want to then find out, okay, so once I know the journey of your business through the numbers, what's behind that journey? So now tell me about your team. Now tell me about your products. Now tell me about how you're going to market, etc., etc. Tell me about the systemized approaches to growing your business. But before I get into that, I want to know the story. So that's how I always operate it from that perspective. You have to be able to articulate it. And sometimes we just get so wrapped up in the mechanics of the business that we forget that what we're trying to share is the story of the business.
I think it's in E-Myth that it talks about people start businesses because they're very good technicians. Run the business. And so they're a technician. They're good at one aspect of what they were doing, and they start a business and they get stuck because it takes a different skill set to run the whole business than to the one task that you were doing from time, and you became good at that one task.
That's right. That's right.
And so here you're actually saying is that, okay, but for the one skill that you have in starting this business, you now have to go and right, okay, what kind of leadership capability do I need to run this business right now? Who I need, who's the talent pool around me to help me lift this business to where it needs to get to?
And it might be when you start with that technician mentality, that might be great for that phase that you're in, that startup phase, you're getting it going, you know, the passion, the vision, the energy, you're attracting people in, you're getting it moving. But then once you've got that and you got your first customers in and you're generating some revenue, you may not be the best person to then put in the infrastructure and oversee that infrastructure to scale it. You might have to bring in a member of staff, and yes, you'll have an overview in terms of the overarching strategy and KPIs, and you know, you're checking every quarter on progress, every month, every week, every day. I get that. But you might not be the person that wants to go and do the nitty-gritty of managing that particular process or system in the business. And so you've got to be aware just of the balance of whom and when and why in according to the phase of growth in your business. But that's how you truly get sustainable scale. And I say sustainable scale, like, sorry to interrupt you, but because the reverse is also true. You can scale so quickly that your business implodes. I'll give you an example of that. I set up a financial lending firm in 2013. I co-founded it. It wasn't just me alone. There's three of us that started it. Within 4 weeks, we had a 5-year, £10 million contract for the government to fund businesses across the UK. We grew from three of us to a team of about 10 or 11 of us within 8 months. Now, that might not seem like a really big jump, but when you've got a brand new startup with no processes, no systems, nothing in place, and you scale that quickly, so do the costs. And at one point, all three of us as directors, we didn't pay ourselves for 4 months just to make sure that our staff were able to pay their mortgages and just do what they needed to do. That was the commitment that we made to them. You know, and in fact, it was Christmas 2005. I remember I had to say to my wife and kids, I can't bring no money in this Christmas because I've had to pay the staff. And my children had to buy my presents. Yeah, that's a whole different kettle of fish. But scaling is important, but it's sustainable and managed scale. That's key. That's key. Because the sacrifice you have to make if you don't is challenging.
Got to manage it completely. Wow, Joel, man, this has been an amazing interview this morning. You know, I'm really moved by what you've shared, your own personal experience, where you've been, and now you're talking about how to drive that sustainability, build a business, pull the ideas out, and innovate for the future, and add value. Get adding value as the most important thing that drives your business in the way you scale it. Wow. Give me one word now for the community. This is a one word now. I don't want a sentence. Give me one word that you want to focus on. You want to focus on in the 1 month we have left and into next year. Okay, go on. A sentence.
Never forget where you come from, but know where you're going.
Yeah. Never forget where you're coming from, but know where you're going.
But know where you're going.
That's so true. This has been tremendous, Joel, talking to you today. And, you know, conversations like this give you a sense of purpose for the wider community that we, you know, although there's individual successes, people are still thinking about their community. People are still thinking about how we can help advance our community for the future. This is encouraging. This is amazing. Thank you so much for today.
No, thank you for inviting me on, and you know, just to all your listeners, You know, my experience is just my own experiences. You have your own, but just don't forget that you're worth it. You're powerful. You're amazing. You haven't started your business. You haven't gone through this work, challenges. You haven't gone through your life challenges for nothing. You are special. Just dig down. Just look deep. Think about the value that you offer. Think about the value that you want to offer, and just double down on that, because you can make it happen. You can.
Hey, did you hear that, guys? You're awesome. You're valuable. Man, you have so much to offer the world, so much to make a bigger contribution and to impact your community. You have so much, but you just have to do some work on yourself. You're going to have to do some work to scale, develop, build your own personal transformation before you can touch the rest of what's out there. I want to thank you for tuning into the Message Talk Show today. We had an amazing guest on the show today, Joel Blake OBE. He has shared his heart, he's shared his soul, and he's ready. He's ready for something new. He's always ready for something new because he lives in uncomfortability.
Oh, yes.
Comfortability. So, hey guys, so don't be frightened to check him out and say, hey Joel, what are you saying to this? Your website, Joel, is www.
So my personal website is joelblakeobe.com, but most people just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always online, so feel free to send me a message, and happy to have a chat.
Wonderful, wonderful. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. And time is against us. We have to go, guys. We have to go. And like most things in life, something great comes to an end, but something better is going to start at the same time. You know what it is? You're going to start your idea, your purpose, and you're going to push it out to help the community. Goodbye to you today, guys. Miss the show. You got to be on the show.